What's up, y'all? Welcome to the 425. You can find me on Twitter at Coach Torres underscore. You can find Jeremy on Twitter at Coach Miller06. Bringing y'all some college football talk from last weekend. Jeremy, we had an extended weekend of games here dating back to Thanksgiving. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Got to spend some time with some friends and family. What you want to talk about from Thanksgiving and Black Friday, bro?
And it was just Ole Miss taking a second straight loss.
Oof.
They lost the rivalry game to Mississippi State, and think this is the second in a row um, that old Mike Leach has gotten the best of Lane. This one
It's got to be a
had
hard one to swallow.
yeah, and then the surrounding aspects of all the rumors of him going to Auburn and then him publicly denying it, and then everyone's like, well, it's Lane, so even if he publicly denies it, like, would it shock you if he took it? And we'll get into the coaching
No.
carousel at the end of the pod. But it's just man, all the momentum Ole Miss had just 2 weeks ago is up in smoke, and they've got some questions to answer. Is Dart the guy moving forward? Can they get some more explosive weapons? And we transition from there to the Black Friday games where, man, we had some good ones. We had Baylor, Texas was very competitive through most of the game till the fourth quarter. And Texas really leaned on its running game in ways that it hasn't all season until the last couple of weeks in the second half, which shows adjustments from Coach Shark, which is much needed. And Texas finishes 8-4 to get where they need to go. Then we had NC State at North Carolina, which was really close, but at the same time, NC State they wanted to win that game very badly. They still didn't have Leary out there, so they were with their young backup quarterback, who looks like he may be a player going forward. We'll see how that partakes. But man, just North Carolina also had all the momentum in the world, and it's
Yeah.
just gone.
Yep.
And
Just like that.
Drake May looked pedestrian 2 weeks in a row, and
Hmm.
not pedestrian. He still had his wild plays, but at the same time, it's like if you're going to be quarterback one next year, like I'm gonna need you, I'm gonna need you to see perform to at a high level. And there are some things that he didn't do well, and also conservative Mac Brown showed up, which Texas fans saw for more than a decade. Even in his decade plus run of 10 plus wins, he was always more on the conservative side, and most of the time it bit him in the ass, and it did again on Friday. And then we had just an absolute brutal beating of Florida State.
Yeah.
It was back and forth. Florida State ended up pulling away in that game.
Yeah, they pulled out the one score dub. Yeah, man, it was I didn't get to watch anything on Friday. I was at Ford Field watching the MHSAA state finals, which we'll talk about a little bit in the Homer pod. Um but yeah, man, I think most of the big ball happened over the weekend, man. Obviously, we have Michigan knocking off Ohio State in Columbus for the first time since 2000, winning back-to-back games for the first time since 99 2000. Buckeyes are completely in shambles. Seems like Michigan broke them, and obviously you can get our full thoughts on that over at the Homer Pod. But golly, man, Michigan and Ohio State, and then what you got after that? You want to talk TCU?
Yeah, TCU, they took care of business. It was really the best they looked all year, which is kind of surprising because Iowa State's one of the three best defenses in the Big 12.
Dude, and
And they
Iowa
just
State's one of those teams that like it don't matter if they're 4-8 or 9-3, like they're gonna give you something. They're gonna test you in some way, shape, or form. And they just got
yeah,
rolled.
they got rolled over. You could tell TCU knew, like, if we take care of business today, it's going to go a long way. And then
Yeah,
Now
some
they have
style points
K-State
there.
going in the Big 12 championship game, and with a team that took them to the wire and it had their starting quarterback might not got hurt, they could have potentially won that game. I know they lost the first matchup by 10, but that game was really, really close, and TCU really had to claw their way back in that game after having a big score deficit in the first half.
Cody, you
And
want to
then
pull up that box score? First time TCU and Kansas State played this year.
Man, the Pac-12 had some wild games down the stretch on Saturday, man. Like wild. Like Oregon State didn't even look like a ball game. It was 31-14. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna focus on some of these other games that are on at the same time. And then I flip back in the third quarter and it's like, oh, I gotta pay attention to this because now it's 38-21 and what's going on. And then Oregon State, without throwing the football, by the way, they went like 30 some straight plays just running the ball
Yeah,
and
it's gorgeous.
continued to score and score and score. And then at the end of the day, Bo Nix and Oregon's offense flustered. Was it
Hmm.
because their quarterback or their coordinator had already taken the job at Arizona State? I know he coached in that game, but obviously he couldn't have the same attention to detail if he was doing interviews for another job.
Right.
So Oregon takes a loss, and because of that loss, they had their destiny held in somebody else's hands. And Washington State in a huge Pac-12 after dark game. This game was going back and forth, scoring points all over the place until Michael Penix in Washington just said, "You know what? Bump this," and they just took over in the fourth quarter and just rolled and didn't let Washington State get anything. And it was a hell of a way to end the weekend of games. And Caleb Williams, now that since we're finishing up in the Pac-12, all I got to say about Caleb Williams is that four touchdown performance probably sealed the Heisman for him. Like I think it's pretty safe, unless he just drops a turd in the Pac-12 championship game. But Caleb Williams on the ground. You had mentioned to me what the broadcaster said and thought it wasn't really a bad comparison. They name dropped Patrick Mahomes and they said that's some Patrick Mahomes like stuff and you said that's actually not really a bad comp. And it's really not because their arm talent is the same. Like their arm is very similar. The things they can do on the run and throwing the ball are very similar. The only difference I'll say is Caleb Williams wants to run. Like he looks to run. Like they're calling plays for him to run the football because he's that good at it. And Patrick Mahomes has never been that guy, like ever. Like he'll run on scrambles and stuff when it's open and when he needs to keep the chains alive. But Caleb Williams wants to run the football, and he just happens to be one of the most gifted passers that we've ever seen.
All right, yeah, man, I got to go back like 15 minutes because you covered the entire Pac-12 there in one breath. But
Well, say
um,
something, man.
well, we're here not to talk over each other, bro. You got to work me in. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's unfortunate for Oregon to drop one, especially the Civil War like that, like after the way that they surged post Georgia. And I mean, obviously Washington was a super tough game. But like you said, with Kenny Dillingham 2 feet out the door, essentially, I mean, that's going to be tough. Uh, and good hats off to Kalen DeBoer, man, going 10 wins at Washington real quick. He brought Penix out there and they just lit it up, dude. I'm pretty sure, Cody, will you pull up the national passing leaders? I'm pretty sure Penix is, if he's not number one, he's like top three, top five at worst, just with passing yardage. Um, so that's absolutely fantastic for them. And the USC Notre Dame game, you saw USC pretty much do what they wanted to a good chunk of the time. Yeah, let's see here. Michael Penix, 66% completion percentage, 4,300 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Yeah, man. I mean, he tore it up. He was efficient,
Yeah.
and they had a really damn good year out there. Threw it 500 times,
Yeah,
which
man. Just like you were saying, Notre Dame, the score may look close, but Notre Dame was never really in that game. Like USC had
No.
control of it throughout the entire thing. And there may have been some times where it got closer than they would have wanted, but I mean, anytime they needed something offensively, they were gonna get it. It was gonna happen.
Anytime that the game seemed in reach, I mean, Drew Pine played his ass off, 23, 26, 300 yards and 3 scores, and he looked pretty good, man. For
Yeah.
the first time all year where I've sat and been like, oh, okay, like maybe this is a guy that we need to pay attention to. But yeah, the game was not as close as the score would indicate. It felt like every time the game did feel close, it was a shortcoming of USC. It was like they did something, they had a mistake, or they didn't capitalize on a situation where they could and should have. And down the stretch, those things will come into play for them should they make it into the playoff and maybe even in next week's rematch versus Utah. Things that don't make them a super complete team. But Caleb Williams played lights out, probably won himself the Heisman. And I do like the Mahomes comp because they have that different arm talent where they can throw it all over the yard from every different arm slot. And you're definitely right on Williams being willing to run, whereas Mahomes just like can and will. But they just have that like it about them, not like the clutch it factor. Like they definitely do, but it's that this is going to sound super strange, but I said it about Blake Bortles way back in the day, where it was like, you're just kind of good at everything they do. And obviously, Blake Bortles turned out to be a horrible NFL quarterback. But when he was at UCF running around slinging the rock, I was like, okay, that dude was probably super fun to watch in high school because he was probably just anything he touched, he was just really good at. And he was always that guy. His career obviously didn't play out that way, but it was just something that I thought of. And yeah, I mean, you're not going to sit here and be like, well, this guy's Patrick Mahomes, because Patrick Mahomes is the only Patrick Mahomes we've ever seen. So, we're not, the draft process isn't here yet for him. He's a year away, but it's definitely a good comparison.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of similarities there. But yeah, I mean, like I think I told you a few weeks ago because we were having like just talking ball pre-talk about the 2023 quarterback class, and I kind of told you is like Caleb Williams, as crazy as it is that it sounds out loud, Caleb Williams is like a more athletic Auburn version of Cam Newton mixed with like the arm talent of Aaron Rodgers. And
Yeah,
I really like what I said back then, and I think
that's just a
it
freak
just
show you're
remains to be
describing.
true. Yeah,
It's kind of, dude, you know what you're saying is it's kind of Josh Allen to some
yeah,
extent. Like Allen's
yeah.
not a terrible comp either. I mean, they're not the same size and the running style's a little bit different. Whatever. We're not going to nitpick for a guy that's we'll still be talking about him this time next year on a college podcast. So yeah, let's move down to the SEC. We had a pretty uneventful Iron Bowl. I know you've got some LSU thoughts if you want to talk Tigers and Aggies for a minute.
Yeah, the Iron Bowl was really uneventful. I mean, it was close in the middle of the second quarter, and then Alabama just decided to put them away. So there were no real rivalry fireworks for Cadillac Williams to drum up. And then LSU just takes a really bad loss. And after Harold Perkins got hurt in the second quarter, their defense was just not the same the rest of the year because he's really carried them. They had a lot of injuries at the beginning of the year on defense, specifically on defensive line. And Harold Perkins grew up and became one of the best players in college football as a true freshman.
Yeah.
And it just was having a really special freshman season, and their defense just didn't look like they had any difference makers after he got hurt, and Connor Weigman threw the ball around, and Aggies moved from going 4-8 to 5-7, which Aggies had a bunch of jokes about the Longhorns when they went 5-7 just a year ago, but I'll preface that by saying one. Um, that this LSU top, they're like right now on Twitter, the Aggie folks are talking about we beat a top five team. LSU wasn't top five, man. LSU is
Nah,
not
man,
a
get out of
top
here.
five team. They
Get
have
out of
no
here.
business being top five.
Hell no.
As much as we liked what Brian Kelly was doing and the turnaround after the bad loss to FSU or seemingly bad loss at the time,
Right.
um, he really did good in his first year, but the Aggies claiming them as a top five win, they just didn't belong in the top five. It was stupid that the college football playoff put them there in the first place,
Yeah.
and it's even stupider now. And um, and second of all, Texas fans, and for that matter, most of the people around the country, they're not storming the field after beating LSU when you're 5-7. Like you don't
And when you're
storm the
supposed to
field.
be, you were a preseason, I don't even
Top
remember,
10.
top five
Top
probably, bro.
10.
Like top 10 at worst. And you're the top, I think they're number 3 on 24/7's composite talent rating. Like you're supposed to be in the playoff. You were picked by a lot of people to be in the playoff or at least contend and win the SEC West. So to preface everything that was just said, like if you're not super familiar with Jeremy and I, Jeremy's a diehard Longhorns fan. I'll root for him when it's convenient. We both have a severe hatred for the Texas A&M Aggies. They're a poverty program. They're not great people. It's a cult. It's a legitimate certified cult that nobody wants anything to do with unless you're like in or around College Station. So we're gonna throw them under the bus every chance we get. And like even like it's super unfortunate that they went from 4-8 to 5-7. That was the text between Jeremy and I over the weekend. Like, yeah, damn, bro. Like it's a genuine shame that they got that 5th win and they got something to feel good about now. You got all of the I've sent you like at least 2 now tweets of a 5-star that came in last year transferring out. And it's just from some bogus account because Twitter's gone rogue and you're like, yeah, it's fake. Like I was getting excited too. Because half these dudes either Texas or Michigan was in on, like or they were interested in, like Josh Connerly's transferring, like you don't say, or
And what's funny, it's so funny that they went 5-7 and stormed the field knowing they were 5-7. Like
yeah,
that's just that's
5th win,
that
hell
that
yeah.
speaks to the mindset of like these little brother programs, like
Yeah,
that they
they're the
would
little
do
brother of
something
the
like
South.
that.
Yes.
And so for them to do that, and then they're like, and then Jimbo immediately throws this dude under the bus as the problem with the offense,
Oh,
fires
Daryl
their
Dickey.
offensive coordinator when
Yeah.
everybody knows Jimbo calls the plays. And
Yeah.
it's so funny that they won that game. And Jimbo's like, yeah, he was the problem. And Aki's insiders are like, yeah, he was definitely the problem. And then next year they're going to have these problems on offense too. And Jimbo's going to have nobody to blame. As somebody that's gone through 2 terrible Michigan coaches, not as people, but as what perceived as failures at Michigan, and 3
Yep.
failed Texas stints. Let me tell you, when when you fire your offensive coordinator and that is your side of the ball, that's like the last stage of denial. And then
It's the
the
last act
next
of a
year,
desperate man, is what it
yeah,
is.
exactly.
Yeah, no,
And
like he's
so
an offensive guy. Jimbo's supposedly this quarterback. He's a quarterback guy. He's a quarterback whisperer. He's a quarterback guru. He's all of those things. And then yeah, like it's kind of like I'm not a huge Colin Cowherd guy, but back when I did listen to him like 10 years ago, he would say like, okay, like when you have this is kind of an exaggerated example, but like let's say you got a defensive coordinator in New England, like a Matt Patricia, and you're like, this dude's on fire. Patriots have the number 1 defense in the league. Like, well, it's not Patricia's defense, it's Belichick's defense. That's Belichick. It's the
yeah,
same. You applied the same thing there. That is not Daryl Dickey's offense. Daryl Dickey ain't
no,
calling them plays. That's Jimbo. That's Jimbo's
yeah.
offense. It's Jimbo's scheme. It's Jimbo's culture. And yeah, and to throw that guy's the first dude out the door because it has to be somebody. You can't go 5-7 with that much money being thrown around and not have a head roll or 2.
Yeah, so I mean, they're gonna go into next season thinking that Jimbo will right the ship, and last year was an anomaly, and hopefully they go 8-4
Yep.
again, and it's just like wow.
Hey, yeah, you guys are gonna do great for
Year
sure.
6, 8-4. Good
Hey
job,
man,
boys.
we'll cover this again later, but that was like I saw an Ohio State guy tweet and Joshua Perry was like, "Oh, physicality wasn't the problem." I'm like, "Yo, you're right, it wasn't, dude. Keep thinking that.
Yeah,
You don't got to do nothing with physicality, bro.
yeah.
Don't fix that at all. You guys are on the right track for sure." So
Yeah, and then
that's one of them
now
things.
to finalize our SEC thoughts, we'll move over to South Carolina playing rival and ACC foe Clemson. And we likely witnessed DJU's last game as a Clemson Tiger.
You think so?
And that's I don't
Cody,
I
pull up
don't
DJ's stat
know.
line.
I don't I don't know if it's in his best interest to go to the draft,
It is
but
not.
I also
It is
know
not.
that
Let's tell you right now.
it's probably not I think he needs a fresh start
He needs a
because
change of
the
scenery. Yeah.
if he comes back next year, the fans are just going to be they're going to be calling for Cade Klubnik, Austin, Texas, um, former resident, and they're going to be clamoring for him the whole time. And anytime he makes a mistake, they're going to say put Cade in. And what started as
He's Westlake, right?
yeah, and
Okay.
what started as a reclamation season for DJU
Yeah, man.
uh, quickly turned around and
Dog,
became a dumpster fire.
after the Florida State game, I put out a TikTok. Like I watched the Florida State game with as a legitimate film review, and it was like, okay, he's noticeably different and improved this year, and he's got them playing relatively well. And now we're looking at this stat line on the screen. I mean, it's the last game of the season. It's a rival that hasn't beaten you in a couple years, and you're the guy,
Yeah,
and you go 8 for 29 for 99 yards and a turnover, snapping Clemson's 40 game home win streak, I think.
yeah.
So they haven't lost at home
And
in a
when
very
you
long time.
outrush an opponent 239 yards to like 67, like how do you lose that football game?
I don't know. You shouldn't. It shouldn't happen. The stats will very much back that up. That should be an easy victory for Clemson with those stats just right there. But
Yeah.
I think the real story here, the two back-to-back weeks in a row, is Spencer Rattler, and is he reviving his draft stock with 2 games?
I don't know. In 2 games he's turned it around. He's gotten better as the season progressed. I don't know if he'll come out in the draft, but I
Yeah,
kind of texted you earlier I kind of texted you on Sunday, and I was like, man, Spencer Rattler almost deserves his own uh like separate category as a draft prospect, and it's the I'm gonna call it the are the Raiders for real category, just because I don't know. I don't
I
know
don't
if
know.
this court, yeah, I don't know if he's gonna be good or not. And
It's
I
an every
and
year
Spencer
occurrence.
and
And with
Spencer
Rattler, it's like an
Rattler,
every game occurrence. Like, is he
yeah,
is he for real? And then you're like, look at that arm talent, and then you just like,
yeah.
oh, that pocket presence and the decision making and that
Oh, look at the way
personality.
he treats.
Oh,
Yeah, look at the way he treats his teammates, and
oh. He was a high
yeah,
schooler at the time, but still, proofs in the pudding. But
yeah,
yeah, man, that's a legit ass 2 weeks for them and Shane Beamer. Normally, I think the last couple of years, Michigan has been rated like the number one S&P Plus analytics special teams unit in the country, and I'm sure they're highly rated this year. But this number one this year has been South Carolina. So hats off
Beamer
to
ball.
the Beamer ball, man. It's good to see it making a little comeback, and it'd be nice if he could keep them rolling. And I never really hated them like when they were winning ball games with Spurrier there. You know, they were 8, 9, 10 win
No,
team, and hey, Jadavion Clowney murdered Vincent Smith in that bowl game a couple years ago. But like other than that, like hey, what go win a couple ball games. You know, ain't got no beef.
yeah,
So all right, let's talk playoff rankings and a quick little Heisman board, and then we'll talk coaching carousel. So Heisman, I mean, it's Caleb Williams at this point. I'm really not sure what would have to happen this weekend for that to change.
yeah.
I'm not sure what the odds are right now, but I'm pretty sure Stetson Bennett's like climbed up into the top 4. Cody, what do we got for odds over there?
Yeah, and I mean Max Duggan with what he's done, he's got to be in the conversation, you would
Yeah,
think.
Duggan had jumped up. So we've got Caleb Williams number one,
Minus 2,200 favorite.
rightfully so. I'm not sure what Stroud is doing at number two after last weekend. That's odd. And then Duggan's climbed up into the top three, rightfully so. And you also have Stequavius Bennett. So, I mean, he may end up going. He would have to have like a 400-yard, like 5-touchdown game, I think, next weekend to end up
Yeah,
in the thing.
I really think they only take three. I wouldn't take more than three this year candidates because it's just anything past three is a farce at this point and just like a free trip to New York.
Yeah, I mean, you have those four guys, and then the other couple of guys that have fallen off in the last few weeks due to injury or play. But Hendon Hooker, Blake Corum, Drake May. Excuse me. And that's probably about it. And then playoff picture. I mean, ain't no surprises on my end. I don't know about you. I mean, it's Georgia 1, Michigan 2, TCU 3, USC 4. Some folks would have Michigan number 1. If you were looking at pure resumes, I mean, Michigan has 2 top 10 wins, 2 double-digit top 10 wins, and Georgia can't say that. So if the committee puts them 1, cool. If not, whatever, straight, we'll take number 2.
Yeah, I don't think they will, just because Georgia won the national championship, and you can see by Alabama's ranking that if you've made the college football playoff before, the committee's going to lean heavily your way for most of the year.
Yeah.
So I anticipate them
Or if
being
you play in
one.
the SEC, yeah.
Yeah, I have the list the exact same as you. I'm sure everyone in the country kind of feels the same, minus Buckeye fans are clamoring that Michigan is so good that you still have to put us in the top four.
Yeah. I mean, outside of them, you're looking at Ohio State. Bama's unfortunately lingering around, and then unfortunately maybe even a Clemson if they win, but we'll need a couple other teams to lose. So honestly, hoping for a straightforward championship Saturday this weekend, and we should end
Yeah.
up with a straightforward playoff picture coming out of there. So since we just mentioned it, Cody, if you can pull up the schedule for next week, we'll take a quick look at the conference championship games before we get into the coaching carousel.
Yeah, I know that Conference USA and the Pac-12 are on Friday, and they're
Oh yeah, that's right. The Pac-12 does always play on Friday. Okay.
yeah, and then TCU and Kansas State are at noon on Saturday. Then we got Toledo and Ohio should be a very fun game.
I might
Detroit.
go. I'm probably gonna go. If
Coastal Carolina.
tickets are on the cheap, like late last minute, I'm probably gonna go.
Coastal Carolina should roll Troy, but we'll see what happens there. Troy's had a pretty good year. For the life of me, I wish that the American Conference had their game on Friday or have it like at 11.
Yeah.
And I've it's been a really big gripe of mine for like 5 years now, but why do the ACC and Big Ten championship games have to be at the same exact time? Like, can you shuffle it some to and stagnate to where I'm not watching, or put the ACC or Big Ten game on Friday, and then have Pac-12 play Pac-12 after dark in a conference championship game? Just a thought. Stupid thought, but just a thought nonetheless.
Yeah, that would make the most sense. The American game between UCF and Tulane should absolutely be fun.
Yeah, no, I think that UCF Tulane, UCF's a team I can't really figure out.
Gone bad.
UCF, I can hear you. UCF, man, they've been. I don't know which team's going to show up. Every time I think they're going to lose a game, they win it, and every time I think they're going to win, they lose it. So it's kind of which team's going to show up. Tulane has been feisty all year. There were rumblings that their coach was going to take the Georgia Tech job, and then that got shut down. And now it looks like they're sticking with their interim coach, who had them playing well for the rest of the year.
Yeah, they finished out tight.
Yeah, they upset Clemson. They took Georgia to the wire for
No,
a lot longer than people thought.
they didn't beat Clemson.
No, North Carolina.
North
I meant
Carolina.
North
Yeah.
Carolina. Yeah.
All right. We have less than 5 minutes left on this Zoom here. So getting into the coaching carousel, if you'll let me just start that one real quick with the biggest name hire, which was Auburn bringing on Hugh Freeze, who is one of the more despicable human beings that has the label of coach that I've come across in my time. He was at Liberty. Before that, he was at Ole Miss, where he got canned for his over 20 NCAA violations, and they're blatant and obvious. I mean, it's commonplace now with the NIL and whatnot, but all the money they were throwing around back in 2013, signing that #1 recruiting class, which was highly suspect. But the worst of it all is, his personal scandal between his university cell phone and calling the escort services and lying about it and getting caught. And in his time at Liberty, where he is in the DMs of co-eds in the middle of the night who have accused his players of sexual harassment or assault. And he's talking about Christ and all of these things and just hiding behind that facade. He's just a morally bankrupt. He's a fucking loser, to be honest. And it's really unfortunate that Auburn's going to give him a chance because they think he might be able to beat Alabama. So
Yeah, I mean that's really all the hire was about, was winning one game a year. Because if you look at the rest of his SEC record, it's not that impressive.
no,
His record at Ole Miss was not good. It was barely 60%. And honestly, I had the line of the weekend when I texted you that hiring Hugh Freeze is like hiring Urban Meyer just without the winning.
yeah, I forgot you'd said that. Yeah. It's like, yeah, you get all the negatives, but none of the positive.
Yeah.
None of the positive. But they went all in
And
on
so,
him. So
and I just for them to hire that man after they tried to create a scandal and fuck with Brian Harson's personal life by alleging the things that they alleged just so they could have a reason to kick him out.
yeah.
And only to turn here is this desperate attempt, which isn't going to get them anywhere. That he may have a good season. Gus Malzahn had a couple good seasons. Probably
He's not
shouldn't have
gonna
let
do
Gus
any
Malzahn go. Yeah,
exactly. He's not gonna do any better than Gus did there, but
yeah.
Auburn's
Gene
on the shit
Chizik.
list now, and I wish them ill, and I hope that they lose all their football games. So
Yeah, and
the
then
other, you want to talk about the two Big Ten hires quick? We got about 2 minutes left.
yeah. So Nebraska hired Matt Rule, which is just an A+ hire.
Home
He's a
run.
Midwestern guy.
Mhm.
He'll probably, the only job he would ever leave that job for is probably Penn State, which may be open in a couple years. Who knows? Shout out to Franklin.
Nah, well, nah, we like him right there.
We
We love James Franklin.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a great hire for them. And the other Big Ten hire, what did you see, Matt? You could talk about this one.
Yeah, so Wisconsin brought on Luke Fickle, which in a bubble is amazing. And just like, he's a Midwest dude. He won at Cincinnati, took Cincinnati to the playoffs. Ohio State fans are now wanting him, and I believe they probably did at the time a little bit more when Ryan Day came on.
Well, they want Urban, bro.
Well, yeah, they want Urban, but like the dude can coach ball, and he's a Midwest guy, and like he's gonna have them where Chris had them, if not elevated. And I saw a little quote today that said like his recruiting base, he's like within 300 miles of here, and he's like, we're gonna win and lose right there, and you can at that school with what they
Yeah.
want to do. I do think that it is a mistake to let Jim Leonard walk out the door, but I did see some tweets today that Fickle and Leonard have met and they're going to meet again about Leonard possibly staying on. And if Leonard does not, he's going to be an A1 coaching candidate across the board.
Hope he goes to Stanford, man.
Good luck for them. So yeah,
you
think you can crush it out there. But all right, guys, we are out of time. You can find us on Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, everywhere there's social media. You can find at the 425. So check us out on the Homer Pod coming up next. Yeah, we appreciate y'all tuning in and giving us your time. We'll catch you next week.
See you next week, guys.
Later.
Later.
But that's how I am.